We watched an unfamiliar truck pull in with a horse trailer at the beginning of the episode, and when Amy went to see who it was because they weren't expecting anyone that day, she was greeted by Christy, the same person who welcomed Amy to Finn's home in episode 10 when she went to visit him. When Christy identified herself as Finn's fiancée and asked Amy to help her with her horse, it became clear that she wasn't just any person to Finn. After a brief conversation with Lou, Amy was certain she would turn down Christy's offer. But Amy paused when Christy revealed that Lincoln belonged to Jay, Christy's brother. Because the Jay who died in the terrible vehicle accident that we learned about in episode 7 was the same Jay. Amy finally made up her mind to look at Lincoln. Lincoln was difficult to move from the trailer, but once it was done, Lincoln settled in the barn fairly well. Christy, who was loitering and cleaning the horse's stall, couldn't say the same. However, Christy ultimately decided it was time to check into her motel, so she asked Amy if there was a restroom she could use to clean off. Since Tim and Jessica were absent, Amy gave her directions to the barn loft, and it was there that Christy discovered the photo of Finn and Amy that Jessica had taken in episode 4. Amy and Christy had an awkward chat that followed. However, it was also a very crucial one because we learned Christy is actually Finn's ex-fiancée during it. Years earlier, Christy and Finn called their engagement off, and the only reason she told Amy that they were still engaged was because she wanted to harm Amy. Since they had just established routines when Finn returned to Kindersley to assist Christy's father the previous time, Christy had thought that they might be able to reignite their romance. However, with Amy in the picture, it no longer seemed feasible. Additionally, Christy said she was in the car with Finn and Jay at the time of the crash. Furthermore, neither she nor Finn can recall any details of that evening. Christy doesn't hold Finn responsible for what happened. However, he holds himself responsible, and a true future for him and Christy is impossible until that attitude changes. Amy fortunately was able to assist with it. Amy still desired to collaborate with Lincoln if Christy would have her even after their difficult chat and after all the cards had been revealed. And while Christy was initially hesitant to concur, she ultimately did. The following day, Christy led Lincoln on a trail ride. Lincoln and Shadow became friends after Amy purposefully placed her horse in the stall next to Lincoln, and their friendship made it easier for Lincoln to leave the stable. But finding Lincoln a friend wasn't the only solution. Lincoln used to routinely exit the barn of Christy's family on his own initiative because his stall latch was frequently broken. But after the incident that claimed Jay's life, Lincoln had no desire to do so. And Lincoln's issues weren't even limited to that. Lincoln went berserk and didn't want to continue the trail ride when Amy and Christy came to a road they had to cross to continue. They returned to the barn after Amy chose not to press the issue, but she did remark that Lincoln had been startled by the road. After they returned to the barn, Amy and Christy had an open discussion about their roles as the other woman and the ex. Amy revealed that she recently realized she wasn't really ready to move on yet. Finally, the two decided to let go of their jealous ex and the other woman issues and just be themselves. That appeared to be the beginning of a brand new friendship. The following morning, they returned to the road that startled Lincoln on their previous trail ride to continue working with him. When Lincoln began acting out once more as Christy attempted to cross the street, Amy urged Christy to take charge of the situation. However, this time a vehicle blew a horn at them as it passed by, causing Lincoln to reverse and knock Christy off balance. After Lincoln crashed to the ground, something in Christy was activated, and all of her memories of the night Jay died instantly returned. It seems that Lincoln was the one who brought about their mishap. Lincoln had exited his stall that evening and run on the road because the latch was broken. Finn applied the brakes when he unexpectedly saw the horse that night while driving in the pitch black. However, Jay took the wheel, and they veered off the road. In other words, Finn wasn't to blame for the accident or Jay's death. Christy was initially upset, which was understandable. She also didn't understand how recalling all of that would benefit her, up until Amy explained it to her. Amy developed a strategy to aid the horse after gaining a fresh insight. She first re-established confidence between Christy and Lincoln by having Christy lead him around the round pen until he joined up. Lincoln and Christy eventually crossed the street once their trust had been restored, and Christy observed that Lincoln was back to his old self, the Lincoln she knew before Jay's death. Amy wished Christy well and said she hoped things worked out between them before she left for home. Shortly after, Christy felt the need to tell Finn what she remembered in the hopes that it might change things between them. They split up as friends, and he also had to give some things some thought after her experience with Christy. Amy finally mustered the courage to remove her wedding rings after much deliberation. But that doesn't mean she's prepared to move on just yet. Even though she took the rings off her finger, Amy strung them on a necklace around her neck because, as she had confessed to Christy, she still has a deep love for Ty. She seemed to be making a move toward moving on while still holding Ty close to her heart. Lou and Peter have been remarkably lovey-dovey since they made the decision to formally get back together in the season 15 finale. The reality is that nothing in life is so straightforward, so despite their renewed commitment to one another, they still have relationship challenges to face, particularly given Peter's frequent absences, and in this episode, they brought up a problem that has existed for a while. When Peter first arrived at the ranch at the beginning of the episode, they immediately disagreed over how they should spend their time together. Lou reminded Peter that they had obligations at home, including a dinner date with Rick and Carl that they had made plans to have weeks earlier. Peter wanted to spend a fun weekend in Banff. Peter had to change his expectations for the upcoming weekend. While Georgie might not be giving Lou the whole truth about why Katie dropped out of a show, Lou was worried that Katie wanted a break from her, because she decided to spend the weekend with Jack and Lisa at the fishing cottage. Additionally, Lou had the idea that since Carl had once worked as a Red Seal chef, she ought to prepare a nice menu for their dinner party. Naturally, Peter made an effort to convince Lou that if Georgie says Phoenix isn't feeling like competing, that's all there is to it. Lou felt that something wasn't quite right, though, because Georgie had been anticipating this event for weeks, and she wanted to phone Quinn to see if she was correct. Peter correctly cautioned Lou not to do that because calling her daughter's boyfriend sounds like a major breach of parental authority. Lou went ahead and performed it anyhow and discovered that Phoenix has a tooth abscess and isn't feeling well, which is the real reason Georgie pulled out of the show. Peter took offense to it, and the two got into a fight about Lou watching Georgie behind her back, while Peter insisted that she should be allowed to leave well enough alone. Lou and Peter had to put their dispute on hold in order to seem to be the perfect dinner party host before Rick arrived, I might add without Carl. It was an understatement to say that the supper was strained. To his credit, Rick made an effort to lighten the mood when he noticed that Lou and Peter were having a relationship. However, he was unsuccessful because Lou and Peter were constantly making fun of each other while eating. Lou is a one-woman show, therefore Peter remarked that she made dinner by herself despite his offer to assist her. Lou, meanwhile, brushed off Peter's statement about her inability to leave things alone and started into remarks about how she is constantly alone and that she has learned to adapt. The two began disputing about how to properly load the dishwasher when Peter snubbed them by asserting that Lou is the family's best chef. When Rick had enough, he intervened, pointing out that whatever was going on was obviously not about knives. He then asked the two lovers to take a deep breath in and out before attempting some techniques he had learned in couples therapy, such as getting Lou and Peter to look at each other and express their feelings using words that begin with "I feel." Even though Rick meant well, things turned out badly since there was nothing to stop Peter and Lou from airing their dirty laundry in front of Rick once the floodgates were opened. Lou stormed out to her room after their argument, and Rick chased her down with their wine glasses and the remaining alcohol. Rick made brunch the following morning after passing out on the couch from drinking too much wine with Lou the night before. Rick ordered Peter and Lou sit down and eat when Peter entered the room after spending the night in the barn loft. Carl contacted Rick, and he declined his call before they could start eating. That caught Lou's attention, and when she questioned Rick about the real cause of Carl's absence from dinner, Rick admitted that they had fought themselves. Carl and Rick got into a heated argument when it turned out that Carl had built a crib in the second bathroom without getting Rick's permission. Because putting together the crib would act as a reminder of what they were unable to have if the adoption fell through, Rick decided not to get his hopes up when it came to adopting a child. Lou and Peter were there to support Rick during his difficult time. In the process, they also came to realize what was crucial for their own marriage. Therefore, Peter and Lou at last made amends and devised a strategy for moving past this once Rick made the decision to return home and apologize to Carl. Lou realized she needed to relinquish some control and allow her girls to seek her out if they needed assistance. Peter admitted that he needs to spend more time at home so he can be there for both the happy and the difficult moments. Jack, Lisa, and Katie were leaving for a weekend break to Jack's old fishing cabin, while Amy dealt with Christy and Lou and Peter's argument. Since episode 6, Jack and Lisa had been discussing a trip to the fishing cabin. Now that Jack was feeling better and could move around more easily, they made the decision to go. And when their great-granddaughter, Katie, begged to join them, they were unable to refuse her. Lou wanted to know how Katie was doing before she left, and for Katie to pack a few more sweaters. So after some fussing from Lisa about Jack bringing things, particularly his guitar, to the truck, after all, Jack was only cleared for light exercise. A little waiting on Katie and a quick goodbye to the family, the trio finally left. Jack requested that Katie and Lisa stay in the cabin while he slept outside in the tent when they arrived safely. Since this was Katie's first visit, he wanted her to fully enjoy the fishing cottage experience. But on the first day, Katie did nothing but read and write in her notebook. Although Lisa and Jack weren't really concerned about this, it gave Lisa the idea to take Katie on a ladies' fishing trip in an effort to persuade Katie to open up. Naturally, Katie was reluctant to go. She didn't see the sense in going because fishing isn't really her thing, and she assumed they wouldn't catch any fish anyhow. But Lisa remained upbeat and set her eyes on catching at least one fish to demonstrate to Jack that she had picked up some fishing tips from him. Lisa made an attempt to chat to Katie about staying to herself on their trip when they were out fishing. Lisa stopped it when Katie said that Lisa reminded her of Lou and that if she wanted the third degree, she could have stayed at home. Then Lisa unintentionally caught Katie's fly in her hand, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it forced Katie to finally open up when Lisa said to Katie that she was more concerned about Katie than the fly in her hand. Katie revealed to Lisa that she had a crush on Logan, but that her heart was broken when she saw him with a girl her own age. After, at Katie's request, Lisa made a commitment not to bring up the subject again because Lou has been persistent in her pursuit of Katie regarding the crush. But Lisa did offer her great-granddaughter one more bit of guidance. Jack discovered Katie writing in her notebook that evening by the fire and inquired about her project. Katie said unwillingly, "I'm writing a poem." Jack inquired about reading it because he was curious. Katie, however, turned it down, believing it to be bad. But the following morning, before leaving with Lisa once more, Katie did read Jack her completed poem. Jack happily accepted it as well. Lisa and Katie continued their conversation about first loves and crushes while fishing. Lisa remembered her first crush, Charlie Scullies, a horse trainer at her parents' stables, and how after getting to know him better, Charlie began to come off as rather uninteresting and boring, and encouraged Katie by saying that she had plenty of time to find the right fish and that there were many fish in the river. At that very moment, Katie actually caught a fish, and the two returned triumphant. Jack had a surprise waiting for the girls when they returned to the cottage. He was so moved after reading Katie's poem that he adapted the lines into a song and sang it for Lisa and Katie. For everyone involved, the experience was fantastic. When the group arrived at their house, Katie gave Lou a hug in gratitude for allowing her to accompany her great-grandparents to the cabin. This hopefully signifies the end of the long-standing hostility between Lou and Katie, and the beginning of a better friendship between the two. The three of them spent some time in the cabin, but other things besides Katie getting over her crush on Logan and sharing her poems with her GGs transpired. In episode 6, as Lisa and Jack discussed going on a trip to the cabin, they'd also mentioned how their fishing cabin needed some work. Therefore, it appears that Lisa intended to take action. Lisa gave Jack some designs on their first night at the cabin as they were sitting by the fire. Lisa apparently hired someone to draw up some remodeling plans, according to which the cabin would remain the same but would get 2 additional bedrooms in the back, a comfortable bathroom, and Lisa's favorite feature, an outdoor kitchen. Naturally, Jack had no desire to initiate this discussion. Lisa, though, outlined her motivations for remodeling the cabin. She desired that the fishing hut develop into a refuge where the entire family could congregate without setting up tents. Jack vowed to at least consider it after hearing it, and it appears that he did because the following day, after Lisa returned from their fishing trip, Jack declared his intention to bulldoze the entire structure to the ground. Jack went to the shed to get some tools when the girls left, which Lisa was not happy to hear. Jack, however, discovered old, empty whiskey bottles instead of the tools his father had favored. He went into a spiral as a result. He informed Lisa that the cabin was too old to be renovated, and that the best option was to construct a new one when she and Katie returned. Knowing Jack, of course, Lisa calmly inquired as to what was going on. Jack eventually confided in his wife. Jack informed Lisa about the whiskey bottles he had discovered and how he had always considered his father's fishing excursions to this cabin to be one of the few positive memories he had of him. But then he thought back to the adventure when Jack had made his first independent fish catch. With the fish in his palm, Jack had sprinted the 2 miles back to the cabin to show his father. But all he saw was his father dozing off on the cabin floor while holding a whiskey bottle, not a proud smile on his face. For this reason, Jack wished to start again and create better memories. Lisa felt for Jack, but just before they departed the cabin to return home, she suggested that perhaps he might concentrate on the positive memories he had made there rather than just the negative ones. Jack ultimately made the decision not to demolish the cabin. To preserve the memories created at the cabin, he actually wished to leave the cabin exactly as it is. But after some arguing with Lisa, they came to an agreement to at least include the outdoor kitchen.